All our lives are stories, they tell us who we are. About me, my friends, my family, those we love and love no more. Live our lives as stories.
Hello everyone, I'm Anna from Australia Reads, and I am, of course, a reader. I am also really passionate, as many of you are, in getting other people reading, more often, and reading in all its beautiful forms and formats. We are so lucky to live in an era with beautifully made paperbacks, audiobooks to fill our ears when we're out for a walk, and the one-click magic of getting hold of an ebook instantly. So much to love. I know that most of you watching feel the same way about reading because that's why we're all here at a symposium like this. Teachers, librarians, school librarians, all joining forces with the booksellers, the publishers, writers, illustrators, festivals, so many colleagues out there in the broader literary and cultural organizations who all believe in the power of reading. We are all part of an ecosystem that supports reading. And it's a really broad ecosystem with around 30,000 people employed in some form of that work across Australia. And I'm not sure that we often get much chance to talk across those different disciplines and share information about reading. Reading is remarkable. To misquote the internet, we get hypnotized by squiggles of ink on the flesh of a dead tree or the glass of a screen, often for hours at a time, transported into other worlds and ways of being. That act can have a profoundly positive effect. One of the strongest indicators of future success for a child is whether they read for pleasure, regardless of social class or background. Perhaps understandably, most of the research out there about reading centers on children, young people, and their families. Did you know, for example, that 3-year-olds who can name a favorite book are better readers at the age of 7? And as we tend to know, if you can read at 7, then you're well set up for school and you're more likely to stay a reader across your lifespan. Once at school, both primary and secondary students who get independent reading time are proven to be more likely to enjoy reading books for fun outside of school spaces. And when it comes to those favorite books, almost all children aged 6 to 17 said their favorite books are ones they have picked out themselves. Of course, children don't read in isolation. Those who see adults reading model their behavior. We don't have to tell them to read. Having reading present in their lives, visibly doing it ourselves, and making space for it in their lives and around them, that all makes a huge difference. From all this, we can deduce that autonomy is a really important factor for engaging readers of all ages, that seeing others reading around you has a deep impact, and that it's important to validate someone else's individual reading choices and to not judge what they have chosen to read. Something for us to consider when we're designing programs and campaigns to engage with readers in our local communities. And in fact, that's a great way to think about how we use research. Sure, we can use statistics in promotions and to back up our case and to talk to our principals and our peers and our colleagues, but we can also use research and those statistics to understand the most important factors that we need to be including in the design of any kind of intervention we make that's designed to encourage and increase reading. Then there's the social impact and the documented health benefits for us all that reading provides. Reading for just half an hour a week means you're 57% more likely to have a greater awareness of other cultures, a tolerance, empathy, respect. It expands our world. You're also, as a reader, far less likely to report being lonely. In the face of a loneliness epidemic in our world, that suggests the role that reading can play in tackling that social problem. Adults who read almost every day have a substantially lower risk of being diagnosed with depression, and almost half of readers says it helps them get a better night's sleep. And my favorite statistic perhaps, a 20% reduction in mortality has been observed for those who read books for at least 30 minutes a day. Reading makes us live longer. Loneliness, mental and physical health, those are huge areas for our society as a whole. And working directly with health and social care practitioners on encouraging reading would likely have great outcomes for our whole community. You can get a copy of these stats and many more, by the way, by downloading our Reading Research Snapshot report from the Australia Reads website. All Australians deserve to get these benefits of reading, to, of course, have the skills to read and to have the desire to choose to read for pleasure, and then to have the access to the books and the programs and the people that support their reading. 44% of Australians have low or very low literacy. The Australian Bureau of Statistics research showed a 7% drop in young people choosing to read for pleasure, so we're down to 72% now. And we know that increases for older teenagers with the summer slump around school holidays. The fairly recent National Arts Participation survey from Creative Australia also notes a drop in reading, and more than a quarter of Australians did not read a book in the last 12 months. We need to monitor these trends because they're slipping on a downward trajectory. We also need to unpack this data so we can effectively design and fund interventions that are going to make the most difference. As a sector, we face systemic challenges. School libraries are under constant threat, with cuts to budgets and specialised staff. So a shout out to all those campaigning to save school libraries. Public libraries have huge pressures to support communities with so many local services and tackling issues like the digital divide. Booksellers are under immense pressure with all of the pressure that COVID has put on retail restrictions and all the pressure that comes from internet providers rather than local purchasing. And the speedy rise of AI and how it will affect reading and writing, the recent attempts to ban books and restrict story times, the cost of living pressures, the social and cultural currents of our society all play out in the reading space. So there's a lot going on. And while some of these are challenging figures and trends, there is plenty of success around reading and so much for us to build on. Whether they read frequently or not, 87% of people believe in the importance of reading. So that belief is not a battle we need to win. Book sales grew during lockdown years. People who read wanted to read more. 2022 was the best year on record for book sales. Social media has provided new forums for discussing books. Book Talk and Bookstagram have had a notable influence on sales and library loans, with young people feeling comfortable to share their feelings and emotions about books. It's a sort of compounded peer pressure, generating a sense that everyone is reading. I will too. Audiobook listening is on the rise. Almost a third of us tune in, and 37% started in the last 12 months. And graphic novels have exploded in the last couple of years. They're the fourth biggest sales category in Australia. Dedicated stores are appearing in mainstream settings. That's great news. There are plenty of readers around. We want to keep them reading. And for that roughly 25% of Australians who didn't read a book and the 28% of young people who don't choose to read for pleasure, we need to understand more about them, what they do engage with, and look at different practical ways to reach them from the current models we're using. There are many individual programs and organizations around the country who are effectively connecting with readers, often at a very local community level, sometimes at a state level. There are many individuals working so hard for so many years directly with readers, recommending new titles, running book clubs, giving talks, hosting podcasts, commissioning brave new works. This is essential work. And yet it can still feel like a struggle to get resources, budget, to be heard, sometimes a bit lonely. We need to ensure as a country that we sustain this essential work and at the same time develop new audiences of readers and respond to changing ways of reading. Some of the things that can help this are partnerships with other industries, scalable programs, and increasing the visibility and conversation about reading in our society. We want to look at how we can do that at a whole of country level, and also look at how we do that individually and how we can each play a part in making that happen. Partnerships can be highly effective. Obvious contenders for us are to work with professionals in health, early years, and social care. We'll need to talk their language effectively and pitch them relevant programs so we can have a nice, consistent sector message from all of us for us all to use about reading benefits that makes sense to those professionals, that we can take to state and federal supporters, and we have to be able to back that up with research. But those partnerships provide great opportunity. I think on a local level as well, partnerships with your between public libraries and school libraries, partnerships with local businesses in the area can all support having that sense of reading being really visible in your daily life. Whether you're going to the local subway, the local shop, if we can start to see messages about reading, if we can start to see people reading around us in that daily life, that will be highly effective, research suggests. That clear message, though, a clear common message to help us advocate for support and investment in reading is also something we need to consider. How do we talk about reading publicly for different audience groups? It probably sounds obvious, but the more conversations and activity about reading outside traditional reading spaces, so in the pub, in the doctor's surgery, around the dinner table, the further we can embed reading into society. While we know a lot, there's probably a few more questions that would help us with this. If we can use research to understand the most important aspects that influence behavior, to put readers at the center, we can design our campaigns to include those things. Back to that earlier point about autonomy being really important. What is it that really motivates people to pick up a book, and what stops them? For example, I hear, I just don't have time a lot. 37% of Australians say that's why they don't read more. But what does that really mean in practice? Are they too tired after work or school? Perhaps they feel selfish to take time out for themselves instead of spending it with as a family. Or are they choosing other forms of entertainment in their spare time? There's much to understand, and it's probably a little of everything. Informing that picture can help us engage readers. And so that brings me to scale. There are many successful reading programs in our country with proven impact for their target groups. For those programs that work well, that have clear purpose, that track how they build readership and positive reading behaviors, can we invest in those and scale them up, provide more access, instead of trying to maybe recreate the same program on a smaller budget by ourselves individually? That way, we can all have access to centralized resources made by experts, based on research, that are fun and a proven fit for their target audiences, that can then be adapted out in local environments for specific communities. A nice mix of national and local, and means those on the ground connecting with readers can focus on that connection and not trying to create every single program for every single type of reader. Some of the questions swirling around my mind right now: do we have the right mix of programs across our country, across age groups? Not just in one organization, but jointly across all the different agencies working in this space. And if we do, how do we make them more available? And how do we see and learn from what's working in different spaces so that we can apply something that might be working brilliantly well in a school in Tasmania out across schools in WA or Queensland or in other spaces, and vice versa? How can we shift our marketing to reach new groups? We know that that message of telling someone to read and saying what they shouldn't do is not effective and can actually be damaging. But what messages will work to reach different groups of young people and adults? And then how do we focus and choose a few priorities? We can't do everything at once. And of course, amidst this, we have to continue to champion our cultural infrastructure. We must support authors and illustrators, bookstores, public and school librarians, publishing staff, our literary orgs and festivals, so they can continue their work effectively. I perhaps raise more questions than answers right now. I know that there are many wise speakers who have excellent insights into how we might start to approach these questions. And recently, Australia Reads held the Volume National Reading Symposium, where the content of this talk first appeared. There is 6.5 hours worth of professional development, online conversations for those of you who might not have seen it, freely available on the volume tab of the Australia Reads website. All there for you for your free access on demand. Australia Reads exists to bring us together to look at how we increase reading engagement. We are a collaboration between the publishers, libraries, Society of Authors and Booksellers associations, all part of this mission to build a reading nation, and that includes you. So to join the conversation and stay in touch as we advocate to government and on a local level for a nation of readers, you can subscribe to our newsletter over at australiareads.org.au, and I look forward to hearing from you.
All our lives are stories, they tell us who we are. About me, my friends, my family, those we love and love no more. Live our lives as stories,